Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, let's take a look at the newly revealed Demons and Dragons. In yesterday's video, I've already gone over all the removed, changed, and returning cards, so if you've already seen that video, feel free to skip ahead to all the new stuff, but I wanted to include it for anyone who hadn't seen it yet. So, we see that we have some removed demons here, mainly just a way to consume the tavern, but we're going to see that we're going to get new ways to consume the tavern, seeing as that's demons their thing. Silent Enforcer, Hellcaller, Lord of Ruins package is out as well. Then we have Felfire Conjure going from a tier 6 to a tier 5. Shadow Dancer from a 5 to a 4, so you can now use eyes on that, so it's going to be a little bit easier to get this combo online to buff the shop consistently. And then we have Tichondrius coming back as well. Now, last time this card was in, it was basically unplayable when it was +1/+1. Then they buffed it to 2/1, then it was a little bit better, but now it's 3/2. So that is quite an increase. So curious to see if you have something like Bran, Malchezaar, Percussionist, Wrathweaver, you take a bunch of damage. If it's at all something you want to do. Generally speaking, no, just because buffing the tavern is such a better way to scale because you are scaling your scaling. The bigger you make the tavern, the more every consume will do for you. Whereas with Tichondrius, you are kind of capped with how many Tichondrius you can fit on your board, which is a lot harder to do than just playing more shop buffs, right? Getting like 4 golden Tichondrius is like, that's way harder than just, oh, I just buff the shop every turn. So that's why I assume it's still going to be far superior to buff the shop instead. Batty Terror Guard, that's another way to eat the shop. So in my detailed review video, I talked about how the game started lagging last time Batty Terror Guard was in, so I'm not going to go into that in detail again, but yeah, hope that's not the case now. Overall, very good card to eat the shop with. It's not hard to spam tavern spells, and then this card will just eat every time you cast a tavern spell. Bellhound is back. That's some tempo on tier 3. Feel free to buy this even if you don't have a rewinder, if you think it's going to help you win the fight, because if it does, yeah, you took 3, but you might have avoided 8 or something. So it's still a net health gain. And obviously this is a no-brainer if you have a rewinder on the board early. Floating Watcher, super good if you have your early Wrathweaver. Again, obviously we want to have a rewinder for this. But even if you don't, you could still use it for tempo with the same logic as a Fellhound. Yes, I might be dealing damage to myself, but if it helps me win the fight, I'm actually healing. Bazaar Dealer is a fantastic value demon. Super happy to have that back. Very fun to play with. Just buying Golden Touch with this for free or like a baller spell. Super fun to do. So that was all the demon stuff, the old stuff that's being changed, returned, removed. Let's talk about all the new stuff. Laboratory Assistant is a 2-drop, which adds a fodder to your next 3 refreshes. So the fodder mechanic, let me skip ahead a little bit here. This will be a fodder. So shuffling the fodder in the tavern, if you then roll and the fodder's in your tavern, it gets eaten immediately by a random friendly demon, and then it will just refill. So very similar to, let's say, the Time Warp card that always keeps your shop full. Whenever you buy something, it just immediately gets refreshed with a different card. Same thing here, only you don't have to buy the fodder, it gets automatically eaten. So that is wonderful. That's a great way to get value from your shop buffs without having to invest money. So Laboratory Assistant early on, super fair because you're already getting a 3/4 stat line. That's old school spider tank for those grandpas out, those fellow grandpas, Hearthstone grandpas out there that remember when spider tank was a thing. But just to say that those are decent stats. And then you also get an upside. So yeah, very solid 2-drop to take. Woodland Defiler, similar story here. You're getting a 5/6 stat line, and then end of turn, the next 3 refreshes, you get a fodder. So assuming you have 0 shop buffs, you're still getting +6/+6 on top of a 5/6 body. And then we're also talking any type of shop buffing. Now suddenly you're getting +1/+1 per shop buff per fodder, so a minimum of +3/+3. So if you've played a staff, that's +2/2. Now you're getting 12/12 instead of 6/6. So yes, very solid mid-game card to add to your board to set up this shop-eating shenanigan. Twisted Wrathguard, that's more the end game version of what this looks like, because fodders can stack in your tavern up to 7. So if you are infinite, if you have a lot of money, so let's say you've got your Bran, you're playing Percussionist, you're getting a lot of money that way, you can theoretically sell 7 units, or I guess 7, would it replace the spell? I'm actually not sure. So 6 or 7, I'm not sure. Damn it, every time, chat. All right, well, that makes for very, very fun turns, because let's say you do sell, 6 minions, then you roll, you just eat the whole shop, and then it gets refreshed with new minions. You APM a little bit again, and then you roll again and eat the whole shop again. So fantastic end game card, I would say. And also, if you have 2 of these guys, then all of a sudden you only have to sell 3 units to have a shop full of fodders. Or you have this guy Golden. So it doesn't take that much, because you might say, well, how often can you sell 6 minions? 3 minions, not that difficult, right? Especially if you imagine I have a Bran and Elementals are in, and I play like Tavern Tempest or some Battle Cries. It's not that hard to sell a lot of minions. It's actually something you do all the time if you're APMing. So I think there's a pretty high cap on this comp. We're just gonna have to figure out exactly what it looks like. So we're gonna see the 6-drop here, which assists this as well. Sorry, I'm gonna skip this one because I want to talk about Conquer. This one says whenever a minion is consumed, give minions in the tavern 1/1 this turn. So if you are APMing like that, or let's say you have a golden of the 5-drop and you sell 3 units, now you have 6 fodders, you roll, you eat 6 minions. Let's say you have a golden Conquer on your board, that's 12/12 to the tavern for selling 3 units and rolling once. Woo, right? So I see some potential here. I will absolutely be trying APM demons where I have the 5-drop, I have the 6-drop, I have a brand, and it's just like sell a bunch of cards, try to get it, make as much money, or you don't even have to make money. Gold neutral also works, right? Because as long as you're buying and selling stuff and it doesn't cost you gold, that's still fantastic. That puts more fodders in the shop. So it seems like a very, very good setup. And then obviously we also have this one, the Void Pup Trainer, which is a different way of buffing the shop. So here I would imagine it's more about using Rylak. And if you have Rylak with a Void Pup Trainer, let's say it's Reborn Rylak and you have Golden Void Pup and you have Macaw, those fodders are getting huge stats, because this says give minions in the tavern from tier 3 and below 4/4. Fodder is a 1-drop, as we've seen already. So this is likely going to be the super end game, the super high cap one, where if you do have Rylak, if you do have Bran, Macaw, and you buff your fodders like crazy, then you play with Wrathguard to continue just APMing with your brand, selling cards, and now you are just getting massive fodders every time you sell 3 things and you roll. Yeah, seems super strong, super fun. Can't wait to try it. And now for dragons, let's go over to removed cards. We see that we lose some Whelp support here. Burgeoning Whelp is out. We also see no more Whelp Watcher, no more Twilight Watcher. Spirit Drake is out as well for the value. And then we're also losing Stun Drake. That is probably the most important card of them all. This was end game defining. We're very, very likely, if you had a lot of money, you had a lot of stats, you wanted to use Mutinous to transfer all the stats to Stun Drake. So especially for high level gameplay, that's a major shift in how we're going to be playing Dragon endgames. Then we have some changed cards. Sleepy Supporter just gets better, honestly. It becomes a 4/3 instead of a 3/4, and it buffs 2/2, but it doesn't specify Dragon anymore. So it'll just buff a minion to the right of this. So that makes it way more flexible. You can just pretty much always pick this instead of only being able to pick this when you have a dragon. And also during the combat, it's going to be a lot safer, because now if your dragon gets sniped, you still have other minions to buff. Evoker gets toned down from a 2/1 to a 1/1. That makes sense, because we're going to see that it's going to be a lot easier to get tier 6 dragons this season. Kalecgos is back, which also makes a ton of sense, because we're about to talk about Chroma Drakes, which is a massive, massive support for Kalecgos. Kalecgos is also 2/2. I think last time they buffed it to 2/2 to make it more viable again, and I think it was fine at 2/2. Because Kalecgos was pretty underpowered at 1/1 and then at 1/2. But now at 2/2 with all this Chroma Drake support, I'm pretty hopeful. And then we also see Blazing Skypin return, which is also nice given that all the Chroma Drakes are battle cries. Should be easy to pick this up early and get some good value out of it. All right, let's talk new stuff. A new dragon 1-drop called Scarlet Survivor. So once this gets 6 attack, it gains Divine Shield. I assume this works during the combat as well, where let's say it's got 4 attack and then you attack with a Sleepy Supporter, you buff it to 6, it would just get shield. So this seems like a pretty small investment, because a 3/3 is not awful, and then you could get some nice tempo out of that later on. There's also Chroma Drake that buffs attack, so yeah, this seems totally fair to pick up and to try and get some value out, let's say, 3-4 turns later. Let's go over to Chroma Drakes, shall we? So we have 5 different Chroma Drakes. They're all 3-drops. But the way it works is you don't see them as often as individual 3-drops in the tavern. I think it's roughly something like the 5 cards take up as much space as, let's say, 2 individual 3-drops. So you see Chroma Drakes probably twice as often as other 3-drops, but not 5 times as often. It's like it's a weird way how they do it, but it makes sense because you don't want to be like, oh, well, you know, half my 3-drops I'm rolling are Chroma Drakes now, and I don't care because I'm not dragons, you know, so that would be weird. But you also don't want to be like, well, there's 5 different Chroma Drakes, but they're only as common as every normal card, so you see every Chroma Drake like 1/5 of the time that you see any other 3-drop. So it's pretty elegant solution how they do that. So you're going to see more Chroma Drakes than average 3-drops, but not as many that they just completely spam your tavern. So let's talk about all their effects. Early on, this is a really fun one. Battle Cry, get a random 2-cost tavern spell. So it's not tier 2, so oil isn't in there. Oil costs 3, but 2 cost, that could be Chef's Choice, Lasso, Recruit. So generally speaking, some value, especially if you're on a lower tier. On a higher tier, you know, you could get something like Hamul, right? Get a 2-cost, or the one that makes 20/20 out of something. So yeah, pretty sweet. It's also a 4/4 baseline, very nice stats. So we have Black Chroma Drake, which gives 1 health to your spells, and Red Chroma Drake, which gives 1 attack to your spells. So these are the ones that I'm probably the most scared of, but also excited, because we have seen what happens when you introduce something that has a battle cry to increase spell power. When Sholfin was a battle cry increased spell power, it was incredibly strong because you would just put it next to Rylak, you would farm it like crazy with your Bran, your Rylak, your Macaw, your Titus, and all of a sudden you get like 100 on spells. You play a Shiny Ring and go like, the board explodes, right? So these Chroma Drakes are probably not going to be that hard to triple because we're going to talk about other mechanics that generate Chroma Drakes. So if you have a golden red and a golden black Chroma Drake next to your Rylak, you effectively have golden Sholfin, which it would be like 2/2 spells. So now you'd be getting 2 health, 2 attack per Rylak trigger. And then obviously Golden Macaw would double that, Golden Bran would triple that, Golden Titus would triple that again. It's like, ooh, that's a lot of spell power. So not sure if that's going to be able to stay in the game. We do see from the previous big remove drop that Murkai will be out, so you can't just use a spell power to go into like Murkai Magic Fin. But if you have huge spell power, it's still, you know, it's still going to be very strong, right? If you can get up to like even like plus 50 spell power, there's quite a few things you can do with that make your board larger. So yeah, curious to see if that's going to be an issue. I will definitely be messing around with that on the season start. And then we have just generic buffs like plus 5 health, plus 5 attack. So Caligos, right, obviously loves these guys. You want to have Bran on your board, and then it's just lots and lots of buffs to your board. Egg of the End Times is the reason that I said, oh, Evoker probably got nerfed because of this, because this is a 4-drop, and if you hold it in your hand for 2 turns, you get to choose a 6-drop dragon to hatch into. Now, you have to keep it in your hand. Be careful to not put it on your board, because it would make sense to put it on the board because that's what the golden egg does right now. It has to be on the board, but this is better because now you don't have to play a 0/5 and keep it around forever. So having to keep it in your hand is preferable. You now get to actually use your board space to try and win the fight. But yeah, this seems good. So especially if you get it super early, you pick up a pair of these guys, and then let's say you do that on turn 6, and then honestly like on turn 8 you got like double Evoker or double Caligos. Not bad, right? So yeah, you do have to offset the tempo loss because you did invest 3 gold in something that does absolutely nothing for you for 2 turns. But most of the time you can figure out a way to make it work. You can even stay an extra turn on tier 4 because you know you're going to get 6 drops to work with anyway. So it's okay if you're slightly slower to go to tier 5. Incubation Researcher is Avenge 4, get a random Chroma Drake. This seems much better than these random value generators. So think Nest Matron, think Spirit Drake, those kind of things. Because here you know what you're getting, so you can also fish for triples. Very much like volumizers in a way where there's only 3 volumizers, so it's easier to triple those. There's 5 different Chroma Drakes. But this would be a good way to set up like, oh, I can just have 2 of the same one. I can keep them on my board. I can buff them. And then I have like maybe a Broodmother to help the Avenge out for the Incubation Researcher. And then all of a sudden I'm tripling into 6s and oh, there's my Caligos. So that would be, you know, a pretty predictable play pattern for this type of card, which just seems good. So that's probably why it's Avenge 4 and not Avenge 3. They might have tried it at Avenge 3 and said, this is a little bit too good. So yeah, this seems perfectly fine. Again, assuming that you can support the Avenge. So you're going to have you're gonna need to have something like Taunt Reborn or Death Rattle summon some stuff. Very difficult to proc Avenge for if you just have a bunch of regular minions that don't have any Death Rattles or Reborns. Draconic Warden is another way to get Chroma Drakes, Battlecry, and Death Rattle. Seems like a fantastic minion to buy if you have Brand Caligos, because now when you play it, you're guaranteed to get 3 Battlecries, right? The Warden's a Battlecry, and then the 2 Chroma Drakes are Battlecries. So yeah, if you're playing like Golden Brand, that's 3, so then you get 4 total. You play Cali, it's just fantastic, super fun. And then in the early mid-game type stuff, if you could probably just keep a pair of these on your board and then you play for triples again, or you just use them for gold, right? The Death Rattle. Maybe even a Golden Warden with a Titus, and then you taunt it, and now all of a sudden your hand gets like full with Chroma Drakes. So there's options here for sure. All right, that was it for the new Demons and Dragons. As always, I read every single comment on these reveal videos, so please let me know anything I missed, cool combos you want to set up, just in general, let me know, and I'll see you in the comments.